Okay, let's unpack this. And imagine having like a personal refinery, a filtration system, and an energy regulator all rolled into one, working inside you right now. We're talking about your liver.
Yeah, it's probably your most vital internal organ, wouldn't you say? Constantly multitasking. And yet we often give it, well, surprisingly little thought until maybe something goes wrong.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is pretty straightforward. Take this stack of sources you've shared with us and just pull out the absolute essentials. We want to get a really clear picture of what the liver actually does, what specifically harms it, according to these materials, how you might even know there's an issue, and maybe most importantly, what you can actually do to keep it healthy, based only on the info you've provided.
Think of it as your shortcut to understanding your liver better. We're pulling out the most impactful bits of knowledge and maybe even uncovering some, well, surprising facts you weren't aware of along the way.
Right. No getting lost in the weeds, just the key insights you need. So let's dive straight in.
Yeah.
Let's just start with the sheer scope of what this organ is up to, like every single day.
Well, the sources use this great analogy. Picturing your liver as a refinery. You know, everything you consume, food, drinks, medications, it all hits this central plant.
Okay.
And it filters it, processes it, decides what to store, and even transforms things into new substances.
It even makes cholesterol. That kind of surprised me. I always thought of cholesterol as just something you ate, not something your body makes internally in the liver.
Yeah, it's part of its incredibly complex metabolic processing. And beyond that, the sources really highlight its role in glucose regulation. It acts like this crucial energy manager.
So.
Well, it stores excess sugar when you've eaten, right? And then it pushes it back out into the bloodstream for energy when your body signals, I need some fuel.
So it's not just filtering out the bad stuff. It's actually key for your energy levels all day long.
Absolutely. And maybe less glamorously, it's essential for waste management. It helps get substances your body doesn't need ready for, elimination.
Filtering, processing, storing, creating things, managing energy, handling waste. Wow, it's an absolute powerhouse.
Yeah.
But okay, what happens when this critical system starts to falter? The sources seem to describe a clear progression of trouble.
They do. They outline it in stages. It typically kicks off with inflammation, simple inflammation.
Okay.
But if that inflammation sticks around, becomes chronic, it then leads to scarring within the liver tissue itself.
Scarring. Okay, so that sounds like the refinery is starting to get physically damaged on the inside.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. That second stage is called fibrosis. And if that scarring continues and gets really extensive, you hit stage 3, cirrhosis. At that point, the liver's structure is seriously changed and it just can't function efficiently anymore. Severe cirrhosis.
Wow.
Well, that's when you see real failure and potentially the need for a transplant.
That path makes sense, though. Inflammation, then scarring, then actual function decline. So what are the main things that start this whole process? What do the sources say are the primary culprits?
The material points to 3 main drivers. First up, viral hepatitis.
Right.
Different types, A through E, but A, B, and C are the ones you hear about most in North America, for instance.
Hepatitis B and C, they used to be huge, really scary causes of this progression, right? Leading straight to cirrhosis, even liver cancer.
Oh, absolutely. They were historically major threats. But the really hopeful part, which we'll definitely get to, is how dramatically the whole treatment landscape for those has shifted.
Okay, good. Promising.
Yeah.
So what's the second big cause then?
Alcohol-related liver disease. The sources are quite direct here. Processing alcohol is just toxic to liver cells, period. And excessive intake kills them off. This damage makes it hard for the liver to do its jobs, and it often leads to a lot of fat building up inside the organ, too.
So it's direct cell damage from the alcohol itself.
Got it.
And the third big category.
That's MASLD. Metabolic dysfunction-associated steatotic liver disease. It's the newer name for what most people knew as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD.
Right, okay. MASLD.
And crucially, this is fatty liver that's not caused by alcohol.
And what are the sources pointing to as the biggest drivers for that type for MASLD?
The clear culprits highlighted are obesity and type 2 diabetes. The sources also really emphasize how common it is affecting something like 30% of people globally, and it's increasingly common right here in the US.
Wow, 30%. So, okay, we've got viral infections, alcohol toxicity, and then this really common issue tied to metabolic health, obesity, diabetes. Those are the big threats pushing towards inflammation and serious damage. Now, here's the tricky part, isn't it? How do you even know if your liver isn't doing well? It seems like it often just works silently in the background.
That's exactly why the sources stress you need medical help. You know, those really dramatic late-stage symptoms, everyone kind of knows about: the yellow skin and eyes, jaundice, abdominal swelling, even confusion. Those usually only show up when the liver is already failing pretty significantly.
So by the time you feel something or see something obvious, it's likely already a critical situation.
Exactly. And the earlier stuff, like just feeling tired, way too nonspecific. You can't reliably point to liver trouble based on that alone. Self-diagnosis is, well, incredibly unreliable and frankly dangerous here.
Right, so you can't just wait for symptoms. It really needs proactive medical testing.
Yeah.
What kind of tests should someone be thinking about based on what you read in these sources?
A standard comprehensive metabolic panel. You know, the blood work you get during a routine physical. That's key. The sources explain these tests can offer really crucial insights into how your liver's doing.
What specific things are they looking at in that blood work that tell the story?
Well, they measure liver enzymes. If those are high, it can indicate stress or damage. Platelet count is important too. Low numbers can sometimes be a sign of more advanced liver disease. Then there's albumin and total protein levels. They show how well the liver is making proteins. You want albumin to be high, and low total protein can be concerning. And bilirubin, that's a waste product the liver processes. High levels suggest maybe it's not clearing it out efficiently.
And did the sources specifically mention making sure hepatitis B and C screenings are part of that panel?
Yes, definitely. Because catching those viral causes early is absolutely critical. It allows for treatment and can prevent that progression we talked about. The takeaway here is really clear. You got to rely on your doctor and routine blood work, not trying to guess based on, vague feelings.
That feels like a really vital point. Okay, now, hearing about cirrhosis and liver failure, it sounds incredibly serious.
Yeah.
Almost like there's no coming back from it. But the sources also seem to paint a picture of, well, significant progress and hope.
Yeah, this was genuinely uplifting to read, actually. One expert quoted says point blank that liver disease is not the death sentence it might have felt like 2 decades ago. The treatment options have seen, well, revolutionary changes.
Revolutionary, that's a strong word. What are the key developments making such a big difference now?
Okay, so first, the liver itself has this amazing ability to regenerate. The sources emphasize that fibrosis, that scarring stage before you get to full cirrhosis, can often be reversed if you remove the cause.
Really?
Reverse.
Yeah, like changing your diet, stopping alcohol. And even if cirrhosis has developed, specialist care can often stabilize the condition, stop it from getting worse.
So caught early enough, it's not necessarily a one-way street, and even later stages can be managed better. That's powerful. What about those hepatitis viruses we mentioned?
Huge progress there, too. They've been largely, tamed compared to the past.
Yeah.
Better public health stuff like screening, plus effective vaccines for Hep A and B have really cut down their spread.
Okay.
And for hepatitis B, there are good treatments now. For hepatitis C, the newer drugs can, and this is a quote, basically cure it.
Basically cure hepatitis C. Wow. That alone feels like a medical miracle compared to where things were just, 10, 15 years ago.
It really is a game changer. And another area with exciting progress is MASLD, that fatty liver problem. New medications are starting to emerge.
Right. Yeah.
Resdifra is highlighted as the first FDA-approved drug specifically for treating MASH, which is kind of the more advanced inflammatory stage of MASLD.
And what about those GLP-1 drugs, the ones in the news for weight loss, like Mounjaro, Ozempic? Are they mentioned for liver health at all?
Yes, they are. The sources note that research has shown drugs like Mounjaro can be effective in treating MASH, and Ozempic is also mentioned as potentially helping. But they do point out that, as of the material we have, these drugs still need specific FDA approval for this liver indication.
Still, the fact that drugs are showing promise for actually treating fatty liver, that's pretty significant, especially with how common MSLD is becoming. And finally, the sources bring it back to something more in our control, right? Exactly, liver cancer. While it's definitely a feared complication, it usually only develops after a lot of damage has already happened over a long time. So, routine screening for people at high risk, and more importantly, making those lifestyle adjustments to keep your liver healthy in the first place, that significantly lowers the risk.
It really sounds like there's a much brighter outlook now, thanks to medical advances and just a clearer understanding of prevention. Which brings us right to the most practical question. Based only on these sources you reviewed, what are the concrete steps someone can take, like right now, to protect their liver refinery?
Yeah, the sources give a pretty clear list of actionable things. First and foremost, A healthy diet, lean protein, lots of fruits and vegetables, and really minimizing added sugars. Those are described as being easier on the liver, helping prevent that fat buildup.
Which we now know is a primary cause of MASLD, yes.
Precisely. Exercise is also crucial. They recommend aiming for about 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity each week. It helps reduce inflammation and can actually decrease the fat stored in the liver.
What about coffee? I feel like you always hear conflicting things about coffee.
Good news here for coffee drinkers. The sources indicate that compounds in coffee, including antioxidants, seem to be protective against liver fibrosis, that's scarring.
Interesting.
They mention studies showing positive effects starting with just maybe 2 to 3 cups a day, and even decaf seems to have some benefit.
Huh. It's a relatively easy habit for a lot of people. And weight loss, if someone is carrying extra pounds.
Even modest weight loss makes a difference. The sources state that losing just 5 to 10% of your body weight can lead to roughly a 30% reduction in liver fat. That's a pretty significant return for a manageable goal, right?
Absolutely. And back to sugar, it gets called out again specifically as a major contributor to liver fat.
It's definitely highlighted as something to watch, specifically because excess sugar is just so easily converted into fat that the liver then has to deal with, and it can build up there.
Okay. What about medications? Anything to watch out for there?
The advice is always work with your doctor, review your meds, especially if you drink alcohol. They specifically caution about acetaminophen, Tylenol.
Right.
Even taking it as directed can potentially cause liver damage if you combine it with excessive alcohol intake. That interaction is something I think a lot of people might not be fully aware of.
That's a really important detail. Okay, and alcohol itself. What's the guidance from these sources?
Well, the optimal amount for your liver health is none, 0. But realistically, the guidance suggested is to limit it to no more than 1 or 2 drinks per day, and ideally not every single day. There's also an interesting note. Body size isn't the only factor in how you tolerate it. People carrying extra weight might already have some existing liver issues, like fat buildup, that actually make them process alcohol less efficiently, worsening the damage.
Oh, interesting point about body weight not necessarily meaning better tolerance there. Yeah. Okay, finally, what about all those unregulated supplements and, liver detoxes you see advertised?
Yeah, the sources are pretty firm on this. Many herbal supplements are unregulated, and some can be directly toxic to the liver. Kava and certain herbal weight loss supplements get called out specifically as bad examples.
Right.
And regarding liver cleanses or detoxes, a pathologist is quoted saying these are, quote, not something we recommend, and that there's simply no data showing they work.
So bottom line, rely on medical advice and those proven lifestyle changes, not on unregulated products making big promises.
That's the clear message from the material, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we've taken quite a tour from the incredible silent work the liver does through the major threats that can lead to really serious damage, the importance of proactive testing, the genuinely revolutionary progress in treatment, and finally, landing on these concrete, actionable steps we can take in our daily lives.
It really underscores that, while the liver is resilient, it's definitely not invincible, but also, maybe more importantly, that you have considerable power to protect it through pretty straightforward evidence-based choices.
Absolutely. Which kind of leaves us with this thought for you, the listener, based on everything we've just explored. Considering how silently liver problems can creep up until they reach really severe stages, and given the powerful impact of preventative lifestyle changes highlighted right here in these sources, does this deep dive maybe change how you view your own everyday habits and their potential long-term impact on your liver health?